coming up?
Being able to start something, know you've got the right approach, tools, people, resources, and then you get on with it. Having 16 incredibly intelligent people in that mastermind, the consistent questions that were asked were also going to know that you are the company's greatest strength and its greatest weakness, if you're the CEO.
David Kenney, welcome to the podcast. How you been?
Very good. Thanks, Kieran. Great to see you again.
Yes, it's been well, it hasn't been that while ago. It's only been a couple of weeks at the time of this recording because we first met at a fireside chat with for our Open Coffee Sydney and all that. Honestly, for the moment that I met you and just hearing you talk and whatnot, David, it was really like honestly, like I was just in awe of the entire conversation, just hearing your story and just even just hearing you speak. I was just in complete awe of you there, David. So thanks for agreeing to come on.
An absolute pleasure, Kieran, and I'm glad you enjoyed the book chat, the fireside chat with Raghav, which is another great bloke in both of our lives.
Yes.
Very lucky to have him around.
Yes, I've actually had Raghav on the podcast as well, so it's really good. I might have to when I do later on, might have to get you to come back on and do an episode with you and Raghav as like a bit of like a circle sort of thing or a bit of like a fireside chat of our own. So
You never know. You never
never
know.
know.
It's all fun doing
So
having a good chat. So, and I'm very touched that you enjoyed the discussion.
so David, so obviously I've heard a bit about your story and but not a lot of people probably would have. Tell us how did it all begin? How did it all begin? You going into the startup world? How did it all begin?
Well, it was probably uh, late 90s, and I was very close to a few law firms, in particular, one of whom was in on one of the university councils, and that person was representing a lot of the professors that built clever things, and I was asked to help with this process around spinning out IP from universities and CSIROs, etc. And as a result, it was mainly that they had just such clever people in Australia, which is a traditional and something we've seen on repeat, that we create some amazing things.
Mm,
And then the question is, can we fully exploit it? Can we bring the value to the founders and the universities and really reap the benefits of that exceptional IP? And so I guess because I've bought and sold and acted as an advisor on so many acquisitions and sales, you sort of develop a bit of a pattern recognition. And when you've worked with other people and you ask good questions, they tend to believe you'll ask more good questions. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to a group that I thought, okay, this is a cool piece of technology. And I was right. It's a global phenomenon now. And that sort of started the ball rolling with seeing something that was so amazing and how it went from you know, essentially a lab to the global stage in 2 years and sold for an enormous amount of money, which is, money most people wouldn't see in 100 lifetimes.
mm,
And I thought, this is cool. Need to find out more about this. So it's all very well acting for mature businesses, but ones that are just getting going that need clarity around their value and how to capture value, how to get in front of the right people, how to position themselves, and those sorts of things I've always had a bit of a knack for. Um, and it was great to meet more people that needed that help. And it just started a bit of a flywheel of I help people position their products and help them meet more customers and help them capture more of that value, and that's what I'm still doing today.
So how do you, so you just said they position their product. Whoops. How what are some good ways that someone could sort of position their product, or like can you sort of explain the methodology or even just ways as to how they can go about it? Because that is, I think, because obviously positioning their product, whether it's a startup, you're obviously going to be having competitors, and that's going to be something there to which is going to be very, very important. So,
Yeah, I think the positioning is really understanding what the story you tell and what the
mhm,
problem you're solving,
yep.
but understanding it from the customer's perspective. Like I see a lot of people, in fact, myself and my business partner Mike are running in a global accelerator at the moment, and we see only the really exceptional are very good at explaining their product in clarity, so that it's all around, the right message for how to describe it with the how, the what, and the why, um, in a way that makes sense to investors or alternatively makes sense to customers. So there's two different channels you need to be able to tune in, depending on what goal or program you're trying to run. So the positioning is very much not from the nitty gritty because no one really cares about the nitty gritty. They just want to know, what does this do? How does it work? And is it right for me?
Mm,
And they don't want to know all the detail. They don't want to know why, how you came up with the idea. They don't want to know. I always say the only person that cares about your why is your mum and your dog. They care about their problem. So putting it in their terminology, in their, um, maybe some people call it jobs to be done, in the way that alleviates pain and takes them to gain, and then absolutely clearly makes that bridge to the outcome that they've been wanting for so long. And I think there's a process around how you teach that. And it's around getting clarity and not just telling people what to say, it's asking them questions on how do you think people experience this rather than what is it?
okay, yeah. I mean, the ways how you are right there because most people there don't want to know, how you came up with this idea. They sort of, it's kind of like the old saying that, what's the problem? See problem, fix problem. That's sort of the way as to how, like, what a lot of business and what a lot of startups basically are. They've seen a problem and they're trying to solve it, as well as even, I think one bit there is maybe even price. I think, is it affordable? Would that be something there to which they can be able to afford? But yeah, it really does sort of go hone in into what you just sort of said there. From what I've been seeing myself and when I've been doing this podcast, talking with people in the startup world, and that's one of the things there to which what I've noticed is seeing a problem and is it trying to and is it fixing their problem or is it just a luxury, so to speak?
Well, I guess the question is really how well does a founder or any company understand the customer? How
Yep.
well do they understand how they are experiencing that problem?
Hmm.
What are the consequences of that problem? What are the workarounds? Do they even know they have a problem? They may not realize that this is friction. They may not see there is a problem. They just assume this is how things work. So it's not always someone says, I have this problem, can you solve it? It's actually being able to see what is possible. And that is part of the product, is the story, is the you mentioned pricing. I don't think the price really comes into it until the very end. Like when
Okay.
you're thinking about the problem, you might, instead of saying, okay, I have a product, its price is X, feel like that's the wrong order. I feel like
Mm,
you've got, let me see if I understand what your problem is, or let me see if I understand what you're doing. Let me see if there's what is it, long as it take you to do that? What are the consequences of doing it that way? What are the bottlenecks? What's it stopping you doing? So rather than talking about the price, I always like to discuss the cost. So, but in their terms. So if you're still doing it this way in 6 months, what does that cost?
mm,
What are that stopping you do? How does that have a bigger impact on the team's progress? Rather than saying currently costs you this, and this price is much cheaper than that cost. Because people buy something and they go through their own logic and they don't want to know about the product. What they want to know is, do you understand my problem?
yes.
Before we start talking about you.
Yes. Sorry there, David. I thought I lost you there for a second there. I mean, it's just that there, just the screen there, just sort of froze. Looked like it froze there for a second there because I'm moving a little bit and you're not. It just looked like that it that it that it froze there. One thing there to which I even got to ask, and I think someone actually asked you this because you are writing a book, and
Well,
you are
finished
writing.
actually, Kieran.
Yes, sorry, you have finished the book. You have published it because I actually remember actually seeing the cover and I looked at it and I was like going, that's actually on one of my lists for me to actually get for Christmas and whatnot. Um, but and it is called Epic Execution and people have got to, go in and read it, buy it and all that there. But I got to ask, why the name Epic Execution? Why the name?
Well, I think everyone's got an idea, everyone has a plan, everyone has a strategy, and they might run into 100 tactics that they might apply. Everyone has pain or has a job to be done, and they could spend their life obsessing over the problem. They could spend their life obsessing over their product, but
Yep.
they've got to get out there and do it. And there's a very
Mm,
clear way of doing it. And it's not by drowning in more information or running hypotheticals. It's around using thinking models and asking the right questions. So I've always found that when I have a problem to solve, I need to think about the right questions and I need to use frameworks and I need to use the right data and I need to use very clear processes to determine what is the real objective, what are my biases, what are my processes, what am I missing? So being able to start something, know you've got the right approach, tools, people, resources, and then you get on with it. And the reality is, there's plenty of people that talk about what they can do. There's plenty of people who'll tell you what you should do, but the only thing that really matters is epic execution. So
mm,
being able to do it yourself, test, know that you're improving. You might be anchoring your opinion, but then you're testing it in theory and testing it in experiments. But you're getting on with it. You're getting closer to the truth. You're moving faster. You're increasing the quality. You're increasing the cadence. You're getting more clarity. You're getting more conviction. And this is the process that happens when you're starting a company, if you are using that approach. And you usually find that it's a lot easier to be tough on yourself before others are. And getting that tough love and being able to transpose the right questions rather than saying, what did someone else do? I'll do
mm,
that. That's the wrong approach. There's so much out there already. There's a lot of books on finding product market fit or marketing or um, building stuff. but I felt like there needed to be, out of the 20,000 conversations I've had with founders, and a lot of those were on repeat because the same questions are asked all the time. So I tried to get better and better at providing more succinct, more clear answers to that. And then when I, with a friend of mine, ran a mastermind, I just kept on seeing these same questions on repeat and thought, well, I need a framework. I need a flow from beginning to end. I need to divide it up into people, product, promotion, and profit. And my mate said, you need to write a book. And I said, well, what would I say? He said, well, just what you talk about, of
Mm.
course. So I decided to do it, and here we are. It's finished and it's published.
Yes, yes, that's actually something there which I put on my Christmas list for me to actually try and get for Christmas and whatnot. So hopefully when I do get it, we'll definitely meet up again for me to actually get you to sign it, and all that there, David. But
You can buy one now. The time is right to go. It is
yeah, yeah, yeah,
to
well, yeah, definitely, yeah,
apply the principles to make no excuses. And this is why I call it sort of we've taken it further now. So we've actually, um, I've teamed up with Mike Parsons, and
hmm
so I've got a book. So you can read the book, and you don't even need to read the whole book. Like you might be struggling with choosing a co-founder. So and you can just read that chapter, or you might
yep,
be thinking, well, financial models beyond me, and you can just read my section on that. So what I did was I gave the book or individual chapters to people that I thought would be, you know, absolute rock stars in this space
yep,
who would say, have I been clear? Are the principles spelt out, but am I not telling people what to do? I'm giving them the right questions so that they can do it themselves. Is it something that an expert would get something from, but also a complete beginner would be able to get the right clarity for them so that they can move forward? So it was very difficult to write it in a way that gave enough information with context, but also questions and metaphors and things like that, and real life founders that actually went through this and what the lessons were and what the
mm,
questions were, so that it's useful and also it stands the test of time. So then I said, all right, how about with Mike, we build courses as well. So because everyone learns in a different way. Some
yes,
people read, some people want to listen, some people want to do.
yes,
And I'm a big believer of having experience before theory.
mm,
So that's why you're starting with yourself in chapter one. But
yes,
with the courses now, they can go further and a person can go through the process of evaluating what they know, going through the workbooks, going through the homework, and then, of course, they can plug in their questions into my AI. So on
yep.
startwithepic.com,
Oh, cool.
there's a book called Epic Execution if you're curious about becoming an entrepreneur. But if you want to up the ante and you want to get better at a specific section of the journey of being an entrepreneur, you can go to startwithepic.com.
hmm
You can do a course. So if you buy the book for $31 and you buy a course for $99, you might just save a lot of your life in going
Yeah.
into a startup or teaming up with someone that's the wrong person for you, or having different values or having a different approach to how we ask questions. Because the truth is, what you choose to do with your time
Yes.
and your money, which is either your money, your time, someone else's money, that is a crying shame to waste. It's much better to have a process that helps you alleviate the mistakes that plenty of other
Mm.
people make. So I say, get a copy of the book, do a course. Then some people might want to listen as well. So you can binge on the podcasts, and inside the courses, there's a podcast for each chapter. Of course, it's read by, well, it happens to be an American male and female. that are actually looking at the chapter of the book and
Mm-hmm.
going through the content and asking
Oh,
questions.
wow.
And by the way, that's an AI person, just in case. So just spoiler alert.
Wow.
Two people generated on AI that are going on a deep dive on the content on that section. So you might want to look at sales or
Yeah.
winning a Fortune 500 company or going global or understanding how to tell your story in a way that resonates with customers or find the right customers for you to be investing your time. And in
Wow.
the 24 chapters, there's a lot of questions to help you improve your game.
That's actually really fascinating there that you actually just sort of said that it's like AI and all that. It just sort of shows because I was talking with people also on my podcast for previous guests about AI and how AI is just sort of making life at times easier for people at times as well. And I mean, you just sort of said there like that there just that's really just sort of fascinated me there as to how the podcast there is just more so just like AI and like wow that's really that's actually making my head spin a little bit there to be honest there David so
Well,
but
Kieran, I look at AI as not a tool. I look at it as like a third co-founder.
oh well, okay
Yeah, we've got there's myself and Mike.
yep
Um, but really, yeah, we've built an incredible database, which
mm-hmm
is the book and the podcasts and other things that I've written, and so we have essentially, like a database, and with that AI, you can ask a question about the book or about the course or about the area that you're struggling with, and it will filter that, not on the rest of the universe, but on the material there. And if you find the answer, and I've actually given this link to people and they've said that was really helpful because
mm,
it was all based on real life experiences with real questions and real scenarios and being able to ask another question to get clarity and being based on the current scenario that they have. So it's not like taking them down a different thing and you could try this, could try, but asking questions.
yes
Questions give clarity.
you just sort of you just sort of said there questions, but there was actually something there to what you said earlier, which is you've spoken to many entrepreneurs and founders, and they ask very much um, arguably very similar questions and whatnot. Now obviously, you know, most of those questions are going to be in your book, but can you sort of share a light into just what are some of those questions there for people there who just stumble across this and just sort of are looking to do their own startup and like that? What are some questions that you've come across that most founders would sort of ask in general?
Big topic, what questions the founders ask. I can answer that in two ways. One is, what should someone be asking about a co-founder?
Yep.
Or I can ask, what do, or I can suggest the questions or the three questions that in a mastermind were framed in different ways, but they essentially came back. What they had in common were these three questions. So maybe I'll answer it that way. So in running a mastermind and having 16 incredibly intelligent people in that mastermind, the consistent questions that were asked were, what do I do next?
Okay.
Big question.
Yes, that
Uh,
is.
the second question, and it was always called something slightly different, but
Mm,
it was what it boiled down to is, what do I do next?
okay.
The second question was, how do I get the most out of my team? And when am I ready to hire more? And how do I hire better? So I put that down to the succinct part is, how do I build the right team?
Mm,
And the third question was, again, always, was, what is the best use of my time?
That I think those there are pretty much really big question. I mean, like really when I sort of think of it now, you saying those questions, it actually sort of I was not actually surprised at hearing those questions because it's almost like saying, okay, what do I do next? How do I manage my time? But also, who do I bring who do I bring in? And I almost sort of
Well,
with your team.
it could be who do I bring in,
Mm,
but let's assume you've got someone there.
yes,
How do I actually get the most
out of
value
it.
for them? No, not out of it, out
Okay.
of them, for us.
Yes.
How do I treat them? How do I inspire them? How do I uh, motivate them by simply being the leader that they need?
Yeah, that's actually something that what me and Nathan, what we spoke about last episode actually, but more so in regards to when you're trying to bring in because Nathan is actually a software developer, he's actually a full stack developer, and if you are doing a startup on your own, trying to bring in a developer, what are some things there? If it's just equity, would it be like that? Probably wouldn't be enough. So, are there other ways that you can try and help the developer, or are there ways that you can, if you have connections, could you be able to help with them or get the best out of them, um, as a way of trying as a way. I mean, I won't sort of say as a way of saying thank you to them, as a way of giving the most out of them. That's actually something that what me and Nathan sort of spoke about a little bit last episode. But um, you actually, but if an entrepreneur or if somebody say wanted to go into the startup world or do their own startup right now in 2025 and they came up to you and they said, Dave, what is what is a piece of advice that you would give them? Like what is like Dave, I'm doing a startup or I'm looking at going into the startup world this year. Have you got any advice? What would be a key piece of advice that you would give them?
I think the first question is, tell us about you.
Okay.
And, like understanding your circumstances, what your background is, what your needs are, what your knowledge is, what your default states are, what your biases are, um, whether or not you're ready for discomfort, whether or
Hmm.
not you like the truth or to be right, whether or not
Yep.
you have really thought about what it means to give up, a significant part of your life to build this project, to solve this problem.
Hmm.
Um, and I think those questions and then being, and I've had this same conversation, I would say 1,000, probably 10,000 times with people on what they understand, what they're testing, what their assumptions are and how they reach those assumptions. And so it's the quality and caliber of their thinking, the ability to influence that are the two real markers of uh, when I think go you, like you are ready. And because it's a very, from an external point of view, it's like me back in 1999, when I saw someone within 2 years sell a company for multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. Um, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And there's lots of examples, but as we both know, most companies, certainly startups, fail. Um, and you mentioned before, Kieran, that they don't. Yeah, you talked about competition, but I always think competition just proves a little bit more so that there's a market there. But I
Okay.
think that most startups actually don't die from competition; they die from self-deception. They tell them things that they wish to be right, and they're not prepared to give up their assumption to find the truth. And that could be that this is the product, or this is the right customer, or this is what I'm currently doing. And the startup is, it's not my quote, but the startup is a learning machine.
Mm.
And the most dangerous person in the room is the one that doesn't want to learn, who thinks they know. Um, and you're making bets here. You're really trying to, you know, as the expression goes, product market fit is, you know, designing something that will actually be something people will pay for.
Yep.
So that by definition means, you've really got to see the customer in the wild and see what they're doing, experiencing,
Mm.
and understand the nature of the problem that they have and the incidents, how often they have it, how big it is, how painful it is, what it's really costing them, what if it was solved, would their life be like? And it it's a very nuanced thing, and being unable to give up the perception of, well, I'm a tech founder, I'm a multiple time tech founder. I think the founders still go through the best founders go through the same questions. Um, they're never going to die from competition, but they're definitely going to die from self-deception if they um, won't face the fact that you've got to find these answers. These are it's the right questions, not the right opinions. It's the right
Mm.
questions to verify, validate, and to build with intention and build with clarity and build with some sort of basis rather than guesswork.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know if this is the right metaphor, but for a founder, they're living and dying on the sword, or they're living and dying on their own hill, with their own opinion. If because as you sort of said there, with the deception and all that there, that they might not be willing to change, or if they think that they're right, that they're almost living and dying on their sword, or they're living and dying on their own hill, and that there can be a very very dangerous sort of thing there, because if your startup isn't working, so to speak, you got to find ways to sort of say, look, what's wrong, like are we targeting the right market, are there things there that we need to change, what are things we need to change. You need to be able to, especially with me work on in the startups that I've worked with, you've got to learn to sort of try and shift almost mid plan and sort of, or mid process, if it's not working, to just sort of be able to assess it and just sort of look at it and go, is this the right way to go? And yeah, that's just something there as to which what I've sort of learned. But that was one of the quotes that actually sort of came to my head when you just sort of said there about the deception. Is that a founder is basically living or dying up on their own hill, or living and dying by the sword, and whatnot.
Well, a lot of people can't separate themselves from their startup, and they go, you're if you're saying I'm wrong, you're saying I'm wrong, or
Mm,
it's all about me. But I mean, the whole thing is, you asked me why the book's called Epic Execution. It's not just saying I'm going to stick to my idea. I'm going to stick to my thinking models, and I'm going to stick to my curiosity and testing and experimenting and finding the value and understanding which market, which channels, which messages, which uh, people help me multiply it, or which ones help me become real promoters of the product. What are which customers get the maximum benefit? Like this is the process. Like this
yep.
is not something it's you build and see if anyone likes it. That's expensive art.
Mm.
Uh, and it's burnt bread. So unless you truly ask the questions and say, look, I'm counting on myself being right.
Mm.
It's the wrong mindset. I'm counting on myself to ask enough questions and to implement fast to learn so that I don't waste the rest of this year or this month on not just sticking to my guns. And that's where the real nuance comes, is that there's a degree of people that say, oh, don't quit. The company only fails when the founder gives up. But sometimes the founder has chosen the wrong thing, or they've chosen the wrong path, or it's not a company that was started with one identity, one product that it can't change. Like, I mean, so many of the big success stories, like Slack was completely different than what
Or even Facebook.
Facebook, completely different. Like
Yeah.
that's because they learned. They said, you know what, we've got all this interest and people are telling us this, and you know what, actually, this would be a better idea. How would we do that? How would we find out more about this? How would we create an experience for customers that they would enjoy so much they keep coming back? And how would we then discover a business model? How would we then
Mm.
build the right tools, the right platform, right integrations, right APIs, right marketplaces, so that people can help us improve this? And it's not everything even do we need to do ourselves. We can partner, we can become um, open source, we can build a platform that people can come in and do work in, and they can provide further value, and we can then make it great for them so they make it great for others, and then all of a sudden we've got an ecosystem. So that's, not you're not building all of that necessarily on day one as an idea, but what you're doing is you keep on finding more ways to add more value to customers.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of said there, I mean, with Slack and I mentioned Facebook because there was a time there when I was working at my previous startup and my mentor, who I was working with now, he actually kept saying the whole Facebook story as to how Facebook wasn't, how Facebook changed from what it was, to what it was now, which is a social network. But it was something else before that, and that there just sort of shows that the ability to be able to adapt and to be able to want to change if it's not working, be able to say rather than dying on the hill, as I sort of said last time, being able to learn and say, you know what, this might not be good for us. Let's maybe change and let's divert and change. As you sort of said there, is it the right customer base, or is it getting the most out of the customers we need? That's just something there to what it just sort of brought back there to me. With founders, do you find it better, or do you find it easier for someone, if they want to do a startup, to go in with someone to actually start a business or to do a startup with someone else, or better for them to just sort of do it on their own?
Well, I mean, this is the very first chapter of my book, Kieran, is like
Yep.
assessing yourself. Uh,
Yes.
because there's obviously founders that don't need anybody. And
Mm.
obviously, um, with AI, people are already talking about, the next unicorn's going to be a single founder with, a great amount of precision and speed with AI.
Yep.
Quite possible.
Hmm.
I can't wait to see it. Uh, but I think the question is really comes back to you. Like, it's what are your skills? What's your biases? What's your temperament? What's your ability to read a situation, read people, read customers, build trust? Uh, can you build the product, or is this something that this is one of the other things that I think is often overlooked, is that a company evolves. So, on day one, not you don't necessarily need the the most technically gifted co-founder,
Hmm.
particularly in 2025.
Yep.
Um, Building a bit of a tribe around automation. And a lot of people talk about AI and they say, oh, we need AI and I need a strategy for AI. But I say you go back to the problem. And the problem could be it's clunky, it's slowing me down, there's friction. I've got multiple um, you errors in my database, and therefore I can't, analyze it quickly and effectively, or so I need to tidy up my data, or I need to speed something up, so I need to automate something. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to be an AI engineer. I can use that, low code software. Like, it's not that you need a co-founder who's technical, unless you're trying to build something that's embedded with AI, and not,
Hmm.
and maybe in the beginning you're really solving a problem, and then you get more problems to solve because people trust you can solve the first problem. So that's when you might up the ante with more detail, more technical expertise, more engineers, etc. So in the beginning, what you're trying to do is solve a problem. Then you're saying, "Oh, I solved that," and people go, "Oh, he did this, or she did this," and then you have a following, and then there's people, and there's customers, and then all of a sudden there's so-called traction, and people want to invest, and then people want to give you more money to get to the next level and create more users, or create more product, or create more um, features in the product, or simply market, simply spend money on SEO, even though that's becoming increasingly different and next, and reaching people, and zero clicks, and first party data, and the different channels that people can go through, and and understanding how to really understand the unit economics better, etc. So, and all of that is something that comes back to the founder to say, what do they need to know? Well, they probably don't need to know everything, but the best thing that they could do is they could say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn.
Okay.
So I know I've got to figure this out, because I say, nobody can give you the answer,
Mm.
because they don't know your circumstances, or they don't know the exact problem, or your perspective, or your ability. But they can give you the question. They can say, here's the landscape, here are the questions. What is the outcome you're trying to achieve? Here's the process that you might consider, but let's look at the questions.
Yeah, that's actually a very good way of putting it, because that's something that what my mentor, because I have a startup idea. I'm actually applying for a couple of accelerators, and and when I was talking to my mentor about this idea, because I came up with the idea back in early January and February, and he kept asking me these same, like, very, very similar questions, and even he just sort of kept saying, I can't answer them for you, but he kept putting on the questions, trying to get me to sort of answer them, because as you just sort of said there, I'm the only one that can answer them. Uh, so it's a very important way for as to how founders are, and what founders are. They need to ask, and they also need to, as you sort of said there, be willing to learn. Because if you're not willing to learn, then well, you're not gonna survive long, or the startup isn't going to be able to adapt or anything there. So it's just that's something there to what my mentor instilled in me, and Chris, who my mentor is. He's worked in a number of startups himself, and that was just something there to which learning from him, is that you've got to make sure um, that you've got to be able to ask the right questions for yourself, and look at the problem that you are solving, but be able to adapt as it goes, because each day can be a completely different day. You could be working
But it is every
till,
day. Everything's
yeah,
different every
well,
day.
exactly, and that's why I've always sort of said this here to a lot of people there, David, is that it takes a certain person to go into the startup world, because you've got to, because there are going to be some days where you could have a 12-hour slug and get absolutely nothing from it, and then go the very next day and go do stuff for 2 hours, and then be absolutely hitting the gold mine for 2 hours, or the long grueling hours. Obviously the pay is going to be absolutely shocking at times, and that's why I always say to people, it takes a certain kind of person to go into the startups, because the hours are long, days are going to be unexpected, and you just don't know what's going to happen the very next day in your startup.
Well, let's break that down a bit and say, a 12-hour day maybe to a founder isn't long.
Yep.
Um, I mean, I've worked with founders that have thought their business is over and done with, or people have pulled term sheets at the very last minute, or they've lost a major customer, or the customer's, you know, done something unexpected, whatever, or they've lost a major player in their team.
Mm-hmm.
You just, it's somebody that's going to be happy to cope with ambiguity, firstly,
Yep.
um, higher levels of risk,
Yes.
more uncertainty, I guess. Um, and in some ways, you've got to let go of, you've got to know who you are and let go of that version of yourself to some extent to say, almost got to be pathologically optimistic, but
Mm.
also equally trying to find the truth too. So you got to think you're right, because otherwise you may never go in.
Yeah.
But you also have to be willing to let go of what you know and know that's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Mm. Yeah, that's a very good point there. Like obviously going in, you're gonna have to assume, yes, this is right. Like I'm solving a problem, but you also have to be willing to sort of say, if it's not working out, or if you need a change or whatnot, saying, yeah, you know what, this might not be right. I might have been wrong. Um, I might be wrong. We, we're gonna have to. Can we adapt? Can we change? Can we modify things? That's something there to which I think. It takes a lot out of a person, and it means that basically you have to sort of, if you're going into a startup, you basically have to at times swallow your ego and just put your ego at the door when you're going into a startup like that.
Well, an ego is like a strength and a weakness.
Yep,
I mean, as I said, you've got to believe you can do it
of course.
because the Herculean lift. You've also got to know that you are the company's greatest strength and its greatest weakness, if you're the CEO.
Yes.
And if you have a bunch of skills that, the right skills, the right aptitude, the right mindset, um, that's helpful. But also, realize, you've got to work with people, you've got to resonate with customers, investors, learn fast, get better, and provide more value. So and move fast. I mean, these are all important parts of it. And they're not even prescriptive. Not every one of these you must be, but
Mm,
some things that are useful to have. There's no such thing as the formula. There's no such thing as, Mark Zuckerberg eats, toast for breakfast and he has a jog at lunchtime or whatever he does.
mm,
There's no such thing as do what someone else did. It's really work out what works for you so that you can work it out.
yep. You said there investors. You said there with investors, and it just sort of actually struck a question because I actually got a list of questions there, a lot of questions there to which I'll have to get you back on there. But one of the things there to which I actually wanted to ask, what should founders be looking for in an investor? Like, should they be looking for someone who is have that wants to be involved in the business, or someone there who's a silent partner, or someone there who just sort of sees this as like a money um, as like a money opportunity, or what should founders be looking for in a potential investor if someone wants to invest in your startup or business?
Well, I think there's a few things that they should be looking for.
Yep.
And the first thing is that there's alignment and belief in that this is a problem we're solving and that the founder has a reasonably astute process on how they're going to bring this company to light.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's enough due diligence on each other so that people can understand, what happens, how will I react when things go bad, and how will you help, and will I be able to um, communicate the good and the bad and have the difficult conversations, and you know, if I'm feeling burnt out, I can actually still share things and ask questions. And then the reality is it's up to the founder what they need. It's not every person that comes into a company has to provide the founder with the same thing. Like obviously, if they're an investor or there's cash, but uh, I've seen exceptional founders get, I call it, put together a gang of five.
Yep.
You don't necessarily get the same thing from the same person. Some person that might be in your bench might be someone who is really good at asking you questions. They might be a great thinker. They might be a really good coach. Then there could be other people that have got exceptional connections, and there could be others that are, able to build high performing teams and can pass that information on, or do some of the lift, or open the door up to deeper talent pools, and there might be others that have exceptional ability to open you up to a deeper pool of investors. So these are all useful things, and I don't think that there's a investor necessarily that can do everything. And even
Mm,
some of the biggest VCs in the US, they have lots of venture partners, and they have lots of other resources and lots of other ways and tools and podcasts and checklists and webinars and all that sort of stuff, because there's no one size fits all, and there's no one person that knows everything. And the idea is to really assess how the founder obtains that benefit, what they need. They don't necessarily need to have a formal, every Wednesday we meet at 4 o'clock,
mm,
investor. But to me, it's about keeping the investor informed, telling them the good and the bad news, because that trust is important. You've obviously got it on day one, but you want to maintain the trust for the long term. Uh, Sometimes you want to understand as much about you as about them as they do about you, so that you can say, well, actually, you're really good at this. I love how you do that, or you've got this insane skill. I'd love to see how I can tap into that. Like, and as I said, the founder's got to let go of the version they are, because they've got to get better.
yeah, of course.
They scale, the company does.
Yes, exactly, exactly, and that's I mean, depending on how you sort of want, I think that's sort of the main goal of all founders, which is to make sure that their startup is successful, whether or not that's for you to exit, or whether or not you want it to sell, or you just want to make it, I don't know, make it as the next unicorn or whatnot. But I think every founder wants their business to succeed and wants them to, yeah, I mean, wants them all to succeed going into it. And if they don't want their business to succeed when they go into it, then maybe they shouldn't be in this profession and all that there.
I'm not sure why they would start if that didn't work.
Exactly, exactly. One final question before I wrap this up, before we move to the end part. What is what is one of your biggest failures and regrets that you've in your journey that you sort of learned from, that you've had the learning experience, that you've sort of said, okay, yes, I learned, even though it was a failure, or even though that it's something that what you regret, you've learned from it for the next time.
Um, I mean, every day. I mean, I don't know that there was one that was the biggest, because I always look at things and say, you meet people, something works really well or it doesn't. It depends on the perspective. Uh, did it work for me or them? Um, like I've had, um, I think 4 jobs, in a very, in my career. And I was the longest. I started in 1994, and I became a partner at a chartered accounting firm, and I was there for 28 years. And I probably learnt a lot at that place. And I got exposed to incredibly clever people, incredibly good opportunities, which I tend to believe that I made those choices, and by putting out, you know, the curiosity and the love of learning
Hmm.
and sharing that information, that came back to me. Um, Now, not everything stays the same, and neither do you. Like, from 28 years, I was probably a very different person to what I was when I left. And the reality is, you go through these things and you evolve. You try and think through things. You don't just say, I'm not sleepwalking through life.
Mm.
Um, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not trying to become something. I'm just trying to be me. And if that, I like to think of it as a process of being curious,
Mm.
generous, kind, and above all, someone who likes to learn. And it's all very well to learn about other things and have 1,000 hobbies, but ultimately, if I'm not learning about myself, uh, then that's a weakness if you're not prepared to look at yourself and say, what can I do better? So I wouldn't say I have a lot of regrets. I've got a lot of lessons
Yep.
in my life, things that may not have gone the way I'd like them to have gone, but maybe I chose those things. Maybe the lesson is I know that that my choices are who I am. So there's no point in saying that hurt, and it was all pain because there was a lot of gain as well through
Mm.
the lessons I learned.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting the way as how you sort of said that there, that especially the part there where you just sort of said there sleep like just sleepwalking through life or and like there because like it really does it really is very eye-opening because the person who I was say 5, 6 years ago, I'm completely, like, I would still say I resemble some traits, but I do think there that I'm a lot different, and even compared to the person that I was 10 years ago when I was 18, so like it really does sort of show, and I think also the experience. I think it's the old saying, the experiences make who we are, and but how we can all try and learn from them and try and actually sort of get better and to try and get better and to keep learning more about ourselves each day. I think that's something there to which um, I can't remember who sort of said that quote, but that's just sort of what that quote just sort of brings up to me a
Well,
little bit.
I might challenge you a little bit on that, Kieran, only because um, a friend of mine um, who was a client actually said to me,
Yep.
who happens to be a psychiatrist, and like he's a client. I didn't go to him for counsel, but I remember talking to him one day, and he said, "You know what? The person you were at 5 is probably who you are now.
Oh, really?
At a core operating model. Like, so, for example, and I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, what were the three things that you like to do when you were 5? And that's who you are. And so I said to myself, okay, I can't even remember what I was doing at 5.
Yeah.
So I went
That's
and asked
actually
my mum and
yeah.
said, well, what was I like at 5? What were my three favorite things to do? And she said, good question. Let me come back to you. I'll have a think about that. And so then the next day she rang me back and said, I used to like helping people.
Mm.
I used to like drawing maps of the world.
Oh, wow.
And she said, you also like money. And I thought to myself, I probably thought we didn't have any. So having some would be good. But drawing is just an expression of yes, it's a level of creativity, even though you're supposed to actually get the map right, but learning. And she also said you like music. So I went through a phase where I would write every Saturday. I'd write an article on Medium and I'd be listening to music and I'd be writing about business. So
Oh
what I did
wow.
was I combined my passions, and that's still who I am. I love music, I love learning, I love creativity, and I love writing about business. So I don't love I have to have money. I love
Mm,
exploring how to create because it's money as a tool. It is not the score for me. It is
yep.
not. I don't define myself by how much I've got, or how much I made, but my ability to think about it and help people achieve their goals is how I define my success rather than saying how much have I got.
That's very fascinating. I mean, like that's actually something there to which that's actually one of the many things there which I'm going to take back from this conversation today because I actually hadn't even thought of that because like I'm just trying to remember stuff there to do what I was when I was 5. I mean, I'm probably gonna have to ask my mum or my or my grandmother about that. I mean, wow, that's actually something that's actually wow, that's actually really eye-opening for
Well, I
that
really
there. That
reckon whatever you love doing then, it's still the same principles that you
mm,
love now.
yeah, that's very that to be honest, that's actually really eye-opening. I'm gonna have to ask my mum and Ned about that there.
Thought you might do
Um,
that.
yeah, even my auntie and all that there. But this here sort of wraps up the episode. Now I have a question that what I always do is I allow my previous guests to ask my next guest you. My previous guest being Nathan to ask you a question. And Nathan's question from the last episode, which was within the next 5 to 10 years, what is the biggest change in technology you want to see, and what do you think will actually happen? And in both cases, how is that going to affect your life, both personally and professionally?
Good question, Nathan. Um, so I think that the first thing I'd say is, I mean, the world is basically now a before AI and after AI world.
Yep.
But the reality is it's not who has the most tools, it's he or she who acts at the intersection of working out what it can do at its core in your business.
Okay.
So it's understanding that AI is not a tool, it's an enabler. So if you have chaos, you just have more chaos. If you have more tools, you just have more costs. But if you go back to first principles, when and we touched on this before, and this is what doesn't change, even though AI is obviously changing the landscape very dramatically, is is still talking to people, is understanding them in the wild in a way that is giving them more clarity than they even see themselves on what it is that they're doing, what's their problem or their friction, or what it is that this is stopping them doing. What would it mean if they could solve this problem? And what would that outcome look like? And how much value does that create? Now, with that lens, which is the lens of an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
the entrepreneurs have just been given like better petrol in the fuel tank. So it's still the same lens to go straight back to the core problem and to think rationally through the processes. But with AI, you don't even necessarily need to start with AI immediately. Like you might just use low code tools.
Yep.
For example, using,
Like bubble.
Bubble or maybe even going down the problem and say, look, my problem is I don't know the right questions. I might start with
Yeah.
Typeform. Then I might say, how do I extract that information into a platform so I can go, I don't want to use Zapier. Now I've got Zapier. I'm also going to use a GPT to interrogate that information I get. So there's a solution that might
Hmm.
help you solve customer queries. It might help you solve all sorts of things. Um, so being able to solve problems, which in some ways begins with automation, like and
Yep.
answering the question. So really training yourself to think. It's not about accumulating tools. It's back to the future of solving problems, but in the most innovative way. That's not for the sake of the tool, it's for the sake of the solution. So, how does that? I think your question was, how will that change my life personally and professionally?
Yep.
Well, I'm already doing it. I'm already using AI within Epic Execution to start with Epic because I want to
Yep.
meet and help more founders. I want them to
Mm.
be asked more questions. I want to be able to use those questions to build up further network effects, build up a flywheel. So I call it the founder operating system. So all the tools and the feedback I've had from so many people is that I wish I had this book 8 years ago when I was starting. I wish I had this tool. I wish I had these courses because they're good questions and they're good practice and they're good interrogation of where you are. So that's the map. There's the steps that help you become better, help you level up, scale up, and find the truth faster. So how does it affect my personal life? Um, Firstly, I'm really enjoying working with Mike. Um, I'm really enjoying, going on a very deep dive with AI, and because as I told you, I love learning.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
I'm loving AI as right now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not, but it's also not for the sake of AI. It's for how I help more people.
Yep.
So our platform has been built in a way that allows the experience someone has to learn
Hmm.
faster, deeper, so that we are now running a global accelerator. So instead of having a process where people learn in a certain way, we can build their own journey so that
Oh wow.
they can learn what it is that's their needed knowledge, not the assumed knowledge. But we can test where someone is, we can design a bespoke program for someone for the product they're trying to build, the stage they're at, the revenue they got, the model they have, so that they can go faster, so that
Mm.
they can learn more deeply and be challenged and be taught and be surrounded by good people that are all in the same boat, that want to solve a problem, make it count. So how is that affecting me personally? I'm loving it. Uh, I'm loving the challenge of learning more. I'm loving the people I'm doing it with. Uh, and I'm loving the fact that I'm happier because that's a good thing for my everyone else around me because like if you're loving life, it's very infectious.
That's it. That's it there, David. I mean, if you're loving life, it is infectious. So before I wrap things up, I want to give you the chance now to ask the question that you're going to give me to ask my next guest. So, what is the question you're going to ask my next guest?
Well, I think I might ask you something that you touched on because I feel like it was a valuable question, but I'm going to reframe it in a different way.
Go ahead.
So, dear next person on this podcast,
Yep.
I want you to think about the three most painful incidents in your life. I don't want you to tell me what they are, but what I want you to do is I want you to think about, and I want you to tell Kieran, what did those three painful things have in common?
Ooh.
And most importantly, what have you learnt about yourself on reflecting on those painful problems?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, even just me now, I can think of so like trying to think of three. That's oh yeah, to be honest, now I'm actually really excited now to ask that question now for my next guest. Yeah, that's gonna be a very big one there to ask, David. So thank you for that there. Thanks again, David, for agreeing to come on. And I have to get you back on sometime again, either later on in the year or early next year and whatnot, David, because like this conversation has just been so enthralling. And to be honest, there, David, like I actually have right. I mean, like you probably can't see on my screen, but I've got like a ton of questions. I've got like four or five like pages of questions, and like part of me was just like wanting to sort of try and get through not all of them, but just like pick and choose just some questions there, and save some of them for save some again for the next time there, David. But it was a pleasure having you on. I'm definitely going to be getting Epic Execution. I'm definitely also going to be checking out the website and also the podcast as well. So thanks again there, David, and it was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks very much, Kieran. It's been a pleasure and really appreciated some really good questions. And to everyone listening, thanks for your time.